Cinderella is a retelling of the classic Cinderella story, this time through Sony, not Disney, except it was supposed to go to theaters, but now it's coming to Amazon Prime because, you know, everything. And this movie is about Cinderella. You know what this is. It's the classic story, but with some new ideas to, you know, potentially modernize it, you know, to attract a new audience maybe, give people who are familiar with this tale something fresh and new from it. But it's essentially just Cinderella again. It just boils down to that. The first time I heard about this movie, you know, I wasn't doing any, like, extensive research on this project or, like, I was super invested in it from its conception. It was just like, you know, I was looking at, like, the release schedule and was like, oh, there's a Cinderella movie coming from Sony, and it's being directed and written by Kay Cannon, who previously wrote every movie in the Pitch Perfect trilogy. I haven't seen the third one, but the first two are enjoyable, the first one a little more so. But she also directed Blockers recently. She didn't write it, but she did direct it, so I was thinking, okay, if she's doing a new Cinderella, it's gonna be a musical, you know, maybe, you know, we could maybe have something special here. And looking at the cast, you know, you got Idina Menzel, Billy Porter, Pierce Brosnan, you know, you've got a solid cast of people there. I did not know who Camila Cabello was, and I still kind of don't, you know, I didn't do any research on her at all. I might have listened to a song of hers before, but you know, I can't place it, you know, I can't name it. So maybe I have listened to a song of hers without knowing it, or maybe I haven't. I'm completely unfamiliar to her, though. I think this is her first acting role, though, that isn't like from one of her music videos. Once again, I could be wrong about that, though, but I'm 98% sure that this is like a first-time vehicle for her. But me not knowing anything about her, I was like, okay, well, let's see what she can do, you know? She's playing Cinderella, let's see how this can happen. Then the trailer dropped, and my expectations went really low because it looked kind of awful, but I was still trying to be like, well, okay, Blockers didn't necessarily look all that great, and you know, Pitch Perfect and Pitch Perfect 2 didn't look all that great from trailers, so maybe it's just a marketing thing. Maybe Kay Cannon just has bad luck with marketing, so we'll see how this goes. And I was really trying to hold on to, you know, this could potentially be good. And then this movie turned out awful. And when I say anything about this movie, know that this isn't me being biased against musicals, because I actually quite like musicals. I'm a sucker for them, despite me kind of leaning towards a lot more like dark kind of horror-like material. I'm a sucker for big musicals. Whether it be like a big kind of Broadway movie adaptation or a movie that feels like a Broadway play that isn't, or it's a Golden Age movie or kind of like a parody of Golden Age movies or a throwback to them, I'm a big sucker for them. In fact, Amazon Prime released a musical called Annette, you know, a couple weeks before this came out, and I watched it before I watched this Cinderella movie, and although I like that movie just as far as like it's weird and out there and it's really trying to go for something, they're just going all in, and it's quite special and artsy and weird, I wouldn't really say it's a good musical, because although the music is kind of fun to listen to, it's not like I'm desperately seeking to listen to any of the songs again after the fact. And Adam Driver, despite him being really talented and he can carry a tune solidly enough, there is definitely times where you can hear the weakness in some of the voice. So I like a movie like Annette more as like a weird kind of artsy film, and I was hoping that maybe this Cinderella movie could potentially have like some of that, you know, musical nature that I was looking for, you know, the song that you're going to be humming to yourself or thinking about after the fact and all that. So I was looking for that with this movie, and it completely dropped the ball. It made Annette look like a, you know, top-tier musical in comparison. After the movie ended, I was like, I need to find out how this movie happened, because I legitimately am unsure how it did. Is this a Camila Cabello, like a passion project just to get her name out there, to promote her brand, promote her music? I bet that's what it is, and I looked it up, and I couldn't find anything to confirm that. But finding out how this movie was made was honestly quite something. Just all of a sudden, you know, no detailed talks about like what drew Kay Cannon to this project or anything. I don't even know if this was even a passion project for her, but apparently this project started because a producer and minor star of the film, James Corden, approached the studio with a new idea to reboot Cinderella, and they did it. This is James Corden's fault, you know, and I was just thinking, like, you know, there's ideas in here that could maybe work for just like a brand new adaptation of this, you know, give the audience something new, or maybe have some new themes that can appeal to a new generation, just our new time period, while also keeping it within that classic time period that story is set in. You know, it's perfectly fine. They definitely had ideas, and I can at least give them props for not doing beat for beat the exact same thing. But man, it feels like watching the Cliff Notes version, you know, because you acknowledge that, you know, stuff is happening, but you don't necessarily feel it. You don't feel the necessary beats as characters, grow and change as the movie goes on. You don't feel like you're a part of that journey too. You don't feel like it's satisfying. It just feels like, well, in this scene, this needs to be set up, and then in this next scene, this is going to happen. So let's get it there just instantly. Like, for example, like Minnie Driver is in this movie, and for the longest time, she's just the queen. She's Pierce Brosnan's wife. And then all of a sudden, they decide to give her a monologue, and they act like she's been here the whole time just for this. Don't you feel empowered and satisfied with this? And it's like, no, like you've been wasting her this entire time, and then suddenly you just kind of like drop it on everyone. It's ridiculous. It's a complete waste of talent. Because that's another thing about this movie that I can at least say positively, is that there's moments of talent that shine through from this cast. Whether it be, Idina Menzel, she can sing, and when she's singing, it's glorious. Billy Porter is there for like a minute, but he's still fun, he's a fun addition to this. But these moments are just so buried under the fact that you can't escape that this is so underdeveloped and just feels so cookie cutter and pandering. Every single decision made on this movie just feels like some weird pandering choice. It doesn't feel like it comes from a place of love or warmth or anything. It just feels like we just want to appeal to the widest possible audience. You know what it is? We want to appeal to the Camila Cabello fans. If they will like this movie just regardless because she's in it, but they can also attempt to talk about how it's about more than that, So we'll have these little basic ideas and themes that are barely fleshed out or developed, but people can act like it's about something because it's there, even if it's not as good as it could be or should be. Because I gotta tell you, when Billy Porter first narrates the first 2 minutes of this movie, I was like, fuck me, this is ridiculous. I was distracted from the opening musical number because I was listening to his narration and going like, this is awful, it doesn't need to be here, what is going on? But once Billy Porter finally, after an hour, finally shows up during that scene, the bibbidi boppity boo part, just without bibbidi boppity boo, it's like, okay, this is kind of what I'm looking for, just a bit more of this, more vibrancy and fun like this. But then a minute passes, and he's gone. There's barely any time to actually show he cares about poor Cinderella. There's a genuine connection there, like you get from the other godmother appearances from other Cinderella tales. This is literally just hey, I'm finally in the movie, so here's a bit of fun musical number, da da da, and I'm out, never to be seen again. You feel like you've made no connection. You feel like this has barely made an impact on Cinderella. Camila Cabello's acting during that part is it's just so bland. She's supposed to be really upset, but at one point she's just kind of like, yeah, I was just singing and crying about it a couple minutes ago. It's like, man, I don't want to diss on pop stars trying to make a transition into acting, and she's not even completely terrible at it, but you can just get the sense you're not really there yet, you're not bringing anything to this role. This godmother who's only in it for a minute and then is forgotten about is overshadowing you because Billy Porter is bringing something to this. There's just a certain charisma that actors can bring that some people who might be entertainers like wrestlers or pop stars just kind of can't. But then Billy Porter leaves and then he narrates the ending of the movie, and it reminded me how terrible the opening narration was. But going back to that, the opening narration, as I said, it distracted me from the first musical number, which led me to find out something in the most shocking way. Because I was distracted and already thinking about oh man, this is not a good start for the movie, I was distracted by what song they were singing for the opening. I was just like, okay, it's a musical number. And then it cuts to the next song in the soundtrack list is Camila Cabello's original song, the one they promote everywhere, A Million to One, I'm Gonna Be That One, My Dreams. But then the song after that original is a song from The Prince, and the ultimate theme of it is, he's trying to find someone to love, he's attempting to be set up with people just for the sake of the kingdom, strategically this is the best choice, but he wants someone to actually be a person with him. So he sings Somebody to Love by Queen. And that's a song that I love. So as soon as he started singing, I was like, wait, these are the lyrics to This Is Queen. Wait a second. What was the first song again? I looked on the soundtrack list and I was like, holy shit, is this a Jukebox musical? I went on Wikipedia, first thing it said, Jukebox musical. And I was like, fuck! There's only 2 original songs. One of them is the shitty Camila Cabello one that I just heard, and then there's one that Idina Menzel does that is so just forgettable that I legitimately can't hum it or remember a single lyric from it. It's just there and gone. Not to say that jukebox musicals can't be good or, they're all bad just from conception. I think it just works depending on what kind of story you're telling. Like, okay, the Mamma Mia movies are literally built around the ABBA soundtrack. So it's like, okay, you're at least you're building a foundation with that. Similar to Rock of Ages, how they took the music of that time period and built a narrative around that just to kind of highlight it. It's like, okay, I understand. Cinderella? Really? Like, a period piece, there's kingdoms and, peasants and the poor, the big castle contrasting with like small little villages. It's a time period thing. And all of a sudden they're singing songs from Queen, the Let's Get Loud. The one that really threw me was the Am I Wrong song, where literally in the song, Cinderella now has to sing Am I Tripping as she walks through the fucking market. Like, what? Like, what is with these modern anachronisms? It was entirely jarring, and I feel like it was not a good fit at all. They have 2 original songs. One of them I forgot about. The other just kind of whatever and bad because it's so filled with the pop star auto-tune, post-production, improvements. Like, let's just amp it up because with our electronic equipment as opposed to making an actual beautiful piece of art, a piece of music, because that's what I was going into this movie hoping for. Just like, big arrangements, lush orchestras, that kind of stuff. That's what I was looking for. That's what I was expecting going into a Cinderella movie. Because, Idina Menzel is Broadway and Billy Porter can probably do some really fun stuff. But then, you put in, everyone is doing like vocal acrobatics where, their voice is like, oh, that shit. I can't do it well, obviously, but like everyone is doing it. Every single song has hints of modern everywhere, and it's so distracting and jarring. There's one guy who keeps showing up who, he's the guy who comes to the town like, hear ye, here's an announcement from the kingdom. But the way they do it, he comes and he starts rapping to them. And I was like, man, I don't want to be cynical. I don't want to say you're ripping this off just because, I'm familiar with it. But this is so very obviously an attempt to ape off of Hamilton. I don't know how you can look at that and be like, that's fresh, that's original, that is a clear original idea. It's like, no, that is so obviously them trying to rip off of the success of Hamilton. So one of the things that I was hoping would be at least enjoyable, I was baffled to see it end up being fucking awful and terrible. There was not one song, even the covers, not one song that I liked. I liked the original one, Million to One, I think the most, just because it's an original song in this cesspool of covers, but even that isn't good. Camila Cabello, once again, I'm not trying to like make fun of her or diss her at all, but like I feel like, once again, judging without knowing any single song from hers, but I feel like she probably works best doing that as opposed to I have to sing a song for a musical. I have to work in the way I sing into a musical because it's just so wrong. There's so many weird notes that are hit where it sounds like, ooh, like, oh, don't do that. Don't sing like that. What are you doing? Where you can tell she doesn't have the best vocal range. I'm sorry to say, but you can hear it. Couple that with the fact that she's not the best actress. She's not doing a horrible job, but she's barely conveying any emotion. There's no emotion being conveyed by her. You understand what the character is trying to achieve through their Cliff Notes style of screenplay writing, but once again, it doesn't make a connection with you. Idina Menzel, like I said, talented singer, but in this movie, she's barely reaching the heights of how cruel the stepmother character usually is. She does have the infamous, ruin the dress bit, but other than that, she's just kind of there. She's just kind of herself, and it turns out there's a reason for that because they're trying to make this a different kind of stepmother. But I was like, man, you gotta develop that way better than what you actually did here. You did something totally unearned and just boring. Even the stepsisters, like usually the stepsisters are like really over the top dumb or like cruel themselves, but in this one they're just kind of there. The way they're written, it reminded me of like if you're watching a movie with a group of friends and maybe you're not enjoying it so much and you are trying to like impersonate one of the characters on screen and like say something that maybe you think they should say just because you're not liking the movie and you just kind of want to make fun of it. It sounded like that was their dialogue, that they were reacting to the movie as if they were watching it, but they are characters in the movie, so it's like I don't know. Oh man. It just doesn't help that also, you know, they're trying to insert these fresh new themes, right? You know, the prince even has a sister who's basically just like the Twitter mouthpiece who says a lot of stuff that you'd expect to hear from people on Twitter who are like really well educated and trying to like campaign for something. And that's a horrible idea because they treat it as a joke mostly. Like, every time they like cut to her, she's not a character. She's literally just a mouthpiece. Like, oh, is this a bad time to bring up this new progressive thing that I'm about to bring up? And everyone's like, God damn it, get the fuck out of here. And you as an audience member are also like, yeah, get out of here. Whether you agree with her or not, you're like, you're just not a character. What are you doing, you know? Once again, something that could have worked better with more development, but also these new ideas they're trying to bring in, they're also sticking with a lot of cliches. You know, Pierce Brosnan, you know, searching for a wife for his son, and if you don't find the right bride, you know, I'm gonna force you to marry one just for strategic purposes. You don't have to love her. And the prince's like, I want to find someone I can really love. I'm not with these, uppity prince things. You know, with all their talk of like, we're doing a new version of Cinderella, we're doing our own story, they still can't help themselves but dive into the cliches still. And I think the big thing to take away from this is that this is all James Corden's fault. And I want to talk about him briefly because honestly, as an actor, I don't hate him. You know, I enjoyed him in The Prom, even though he's not a gay man. There is a discussion to be had about that. You know, that's not his worst performance. He's definitely had worse. You know, I enjoyed him in that. He's a good singer. He's great in Into the Woods. You know, he's had good roles. There's a lot where he's bad though. And in this movie, it's bad. He plays a mouse. He plays one of the mice, and two other British comedians or actors or non-actors or comedians. I don't know who they were, but James Corden's the only one that's like recognizable instantly. But you know, he's with two other British people, and they talk as these mice, and they're annoying all the way through because they very obviously are just the, all right, well, we need some humor, so let's insert a line here that'll lighten up the mood a little bit and also show off our amazing comedic talents, especially me, James Corden. And it gets worse when they become human for that brief amount of time. They have a little like backup bit in the Billy Porter song. I was surprised that James Corden didn't give himself a musical number, if I'm being honest, but they have like a backup bit in the Billy Porter number, and you can hear that James Corden's audio track is definitely higher up than the other two, so you hear his voice more. But then they start to do the basic, like, we're humans now, and there's definitely humor to be had with that, so let's talk about how we can pee easily. James Corden talks about his dick in this. Or there's even a bit where James Corden starts doing like, oh, look, oh, I can clap, look, we can clap. You know, they're trying to talk to like a horse, and they either can understand it or they can't, you know, because they used to be in, whatever. It all just rang to me that like James Corden thinks he's being cute right now. He thinks he's like, you know, appealing to his audience and being like really funny for everyone, you know, but it was just so obnoxious, you know. It's the usual shit that you'd expect to see, just told in the most unfunny way. It's like there's nothing fresh about it. There's nothing surprisingly funny about what you're doing. It's all awful. There's another moment where they turn back into mice, you know, that classic bit where, you know, clock strikes midnight. One of his buddies turns into a mouse instantly, and then he's the next one to go. But what he decides to do, he used his producing credit to like have his body turn into a mouse and have him float in the air with his big ass head still in frame, screaming for like a solid 10 seconds, like, I'm turning back into a mouse, and you're just looking at it, and it's like, why are we doing this? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing any of this? Why did he allow any of this to happen? This is all James Corden's fault. And also, you know, it doesn't help that the CGI looks fucking terrible, especially on them, but it's just, it all just kind of rang true to me. That's when it really clicked. Like, this movie is just about selling people on stuff. It's about pandering to the most lowest common denominator. You know, it's about selling Camila Cabello. It's about selling James Corden, Billy Porter even, and even Idina Menzel. It's about selling all these things without giving you anything of substance in return. And it's like, man, fuck that. I'm gonna give this movie a D+. I do want to give props to, you know, some of the practical stuff, like the costume design and like the set stuff they do. The hardworking people that, you know, made all that happen. Good job, guys. It's better than all of the CGI in this. There's moments where talent does shine through in this, but it's all buried under just this weird, sleazy corporate thing. It does not surprise me in the least that this was originally supposed to be released in theaters by Sony. But if you've seen this new Cinderella, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.